Hello and welcome to Muse Jam Session recording 206. My name is Dani Beaumont and I'm a Principal Product Manager on Adobe Muse. Thanks for joining us today for this hour. One realization I've had is building some of the more complicated websites that are out there in 60 minutes or less might be a bit of a tall order. And in all honesty, this session has turned into kind of a hybrid, to be honest. On one end, it's how you go about looking at an existing website and determining the content that you need to extract from that site to build it out in Adobe Muse. And the other is probably going to morph into more of a how did you do that jam session. So speaking more about how certain effects of certain sites are created and whether or not Muse can achieve that same effect. So when I do push this session up, I tend to put a question out there for folks as to what sites they'd like to see recreated. And I did get a few suggestions this week. I got about at least 3. And I've picked one of those sites. So we're going to go ahead and dig in and see how far we get in a 60-minute window around rebuilding the site. So the site that we are going to focus on today it's actually a church website, and we tend to avoid different topics with things like site of the day, political topics, anything religious, generally speaking. But this is a WordPress template originally, and it is one that makes me dizzy if I look at the video for too long. It is one that can be recreated with Adobe Muse and also some of the third-party widgets. So we're going to go ahead and use this site as a goal and start to build out the content. As I mentioned, highly unlikely that we'll build the entire site out. It's a pretty robust site. But I'd like to talk about just some of the pieces that I see here and how you go about creating that. So one of the things I think is amazing when it comes to website design, for me, I don't obviously do it as a career. I'm more of a product manager. But I've built quite a number of sites. And generally speaking, I have no problem being the webmaster when it comes to a committee or a parent-run group or nonprofit, anything of that sort. The thing that tends to be the hardest, that takes the most time, is figuring out what's going to be on a site. So if you have Muse and you want to approach a client and you want to build out a site for them, and they're asking you to take up an old design and improve it, take it forward, things of that sort. This session is really geared towards that. How can you go about finding all of those pieces when you don't have the original source code, either because it's something you don't have access to or because it's built using another tool? As I mentioned, this site is a WordPress template originally. I haven't been able to find the original template to see what that looked like, but one of the tools that I use gives you a sense of how tools are authored or how websites are authored. And again, I'm fairly certain it's using an original template that's been changed, and it's definitely hosted on WordPress. So as we work today, I do have kind of a working notes sheet that you may want to rely on. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'll put this URL in the comments, the video notes towards the bottom. If you're on Facebook and you want to follow along, if you go to tinyurl.com/mujam-site-60, it will take you to these living notes, and I'll keep these up for a period of time. One of the first things I want to focus on is kind of some of the tips and tricks that I've gathered over time for extracting content on an existing site. Now, many of you know I was never a coder. I have worked on Dreamweaver as a product manager in the past, but life is funny because it feels like more and more you never have time to really understand what a tool does. I do lots of video recordings. I'm about to jump into the studio to do a bunch of tooltip videos for a brand new set of starter designs that the Muse team is working on. And I laugh because goodness knows I don't have time to go in and actually learn how to use the screen recording application. I just hit the Google and get by as quickly as I can. So some of the techniques I do know about extracting content, I am sure many of you know more tips and tricks, and I'd love if you send them my way. The reason why we call this a jam session is we learn from each other. not necessarily during the session anymore, but if you have ideas, tips that you'd like to share, please go ahead and send me an email. If you promise not to spam me, just Dani@adobe.com is a great way to send feedback about either topics you'd like to see covered or examples of ideas that you hear me bring up to take things further, especially if it's work that you've done in Adobe Muse. So submitting your designs is immensely helpful. In fact, I'm going to go over there real quickly. We have a microsite. It's kind of a playground for the Adobe Muse team. And in it, we kind of control it so it doesn't have to work through the Adobe marketing organization quite as much, which means we keep it pretty fresh. I am going to do a jam session next week, same place, same time, on Wednesday. And it is going to be a sneak peek at what we're working on from the engineering team. So actually understanding the new features that will be delivered to the market. So if you're keen on that, come watch that session live next week, or just watch the recording on YouTube if you can't make it live. But when we start to talk about those new features, we outline those capabilities in the tutorial section here. There's always different training pieces, quick videos that show off the new features and functionality. But another place to really learn a lot about the Muse world is Site of the Day. Let's see if I can get the actual resolution. So Site of the Day is a terrific place where designers submit their Muse websites. I learn an immense amount from submissions here. Even if I don't select everyone's design, I really, really find it informative. So submit your work here. It helps us immensely. Getting kind of back on track, we're going to build this site out. And one of the first things that I've learned to do is, especially in the world of responsive design, you really have to stop, and whether it's on a whiteboard or a piece of paper or screenshots, sketches, whatever your wireframing planning tool is, definitely begin by understanding the overall structure of your site. I think no longer is the day where you can just jump into Muse, say File New, and start playing and evolve your site without really planning it. And there are two major technologies that Muse employs. One is scroll effects, another one is responsive design. And in both instances, these are techniques that, at least when they were first delivered with the Muse application, there were no visual design tools that allowed you to do it. So when it came to scroll effects, we honestly have over-engineered that solution. We need to go back and simplify it, and that's in our roadmap plans. But scroll effects is an amazingly complex technique that you can achieve on fixed breakpoints with Adobe Muse. Another one, responsive design. In all honesty, we allow you on a free design canvas to build out a responsive website. Whatever you do, you can quickly view in the web browser. But responsive design is getting more powerful in Muse every day. It's not necessarily getting more easy and more intuitive. And one of the challenges, for sure, is as you're working on a responsive layout, really knowing where you're headed so that as you have content that is laid out across many breakpoints, you can cause as much or as little stress as possible, really optimize your workflow as much as possible by thinking about the structure of your design. So I was sniffing this site. Again, I don't have the source code. It feels to me like they use a bit of the same approach that Muse uses, which is the header and the footer seem to have a number of breakpoints, and then the text within the page have a different set of breakpoints based on that page content. So one of the first things I like to do is use a screen capture tool to really capture the entire length of a page and each of the breakpoints that are in use. Now, in that Evernote document, I've got links to different Chrome extensions that I've found over time. One of them is terrific, but it's not quite perfect. And I think it's just called Breakpoint, and I link it there. What it does, it hasn't worked for me for a while here, in that I can't quite see all the numbers. I can tell I'm at about 1,400 pixels in width, pretty much because I know the size of my display. But as I press and drag here to reduce the width of my browser, you can see that number starting to go down. Again, I actually reached out to the developer to see if he could fix it so that I could, again, see the values here. When you get down to smaller numbers, 3-digit numbers, you can clearly see how large your breakpoint is. I'm open to anybody in the community that's found a good tool that does this for you. which is being able to sniff out the breakpoints that are predefined in a site. But that's one of the first things you are going to want to do through experimentation. So I believe, roughly speaking, if I pull the browser out to about 1200 pixels, right about, where the 13 becomes a 2, right about, there. What I would suggest you do is take a screen capture of the page. I'm a Mac user. Snagit has something known as a scrolling screen capture. I love it. Basically, if I come into this page, when I come to capture the screen, notice that arrow on the lower right-hand corner. If I click it, the capture app is capturing the height of the page in its entirety as one single capture. So I'm running through and saying, do me a favor, show me the desktop layout of this page. Takes a few seconds to actually generate it based on the complexity of that page. We'll give it just a second here. And then the next thing I did is kind of just pull things down. I know that they have a mobile menu here. So as I drag down into about the 800 mark, I think is the point. There you go. So when I hit, see how I'm at right there at 800. If I jump over precisely there, I go to the mobile menu. Now I could go on in and bring it down towards a phone size, but it really doesn't matter in the page layout here I've found. I would then come in and just grab a second screen capture of that narrower page. Now this will show off things like if you're using a tile structure or columns, basically, how those columns stack on top of one another. For example, if I go to some of the deeper pages here, this, as I mentioned, is a site that has a lot of content. In this instance, I can see that there's 2 columns here. And at a certain point, notice it looks like at about 1000 pixels. Yeah, it's jumping from a 2-column structure down to a 1-column structure. So if you are recreating an entire site, if there seem to be templates where there's a certain structure to some of the pages, I encourage you to come on through and capture those screenshots. You can always do it if you don't have a scrolling screen capture, do it in chunks and gather them together. Sometimes just hitting print from the browser will do a good job for you, but quite often it won't. End results in the screen capture app is that I can jump in here and just take a look at the pages that I've captured. So you'll notice here is all in one the desktop layout of that landing page. I can see, actually this is not the landing, but the internal page. I can see the 2-column structure, items that are full width. What I would encourage you to do is really come through here and start to dissect what the elements are that we're looking at. I've got a full browser width element with a headline text. There is a parallax effect that's being used throughout this site where background images are moving at a different speed of scroll. If I jump now to the phone layout, I can compare how that phone layout is different and look at the single column versus double column, things of that sort. So definitely capture all your content, put it up on a wall, make sure you know where you're headed so you don't get lost in the details too easily. The next thing that I tend to do is start to sniff out text that's being used within the site. So one really nice little free Chrome extension that I bumped into is something called What Font. And it allows you to basically click within a website and determine exactly what typeface is in use. So notice as I click through each of these elements, I'm seeing a text specification. That one's a little tough to get to. But I see a text specification for each of these type usages. And I can see that throughout the site, it looks like Proxima Nova. Here's bold, regular, semi-bold, regular. So different weights of that same font. If there's point sizes in use, I can see that. If there, I believe it'll even tell you if there's tracking or tracking being applied to the text as you're working. Maybe not. This one looks like it's tracked out a little bit and I don't see the value. You can also see fonts colors as well. So let's go on in and grab the Proxima Nova family of fonts. I don't see anything condensed. It's all, I think, standard weight. So I'm going to swing over to Adobe Muse and I'm going to go ahead and create a new document. We'll go with a fluid width document. And I'll go ahead and set it, I'm going to say 1200 pixels in width, because I think that's about what we got going on in that original design. It's very fluid and it's very light on content. So I didn't test it on a really big monitor, but that may be something you'd want to do to determine what is is it boxed, as they say? Does it stop at, let's say, 1400 pixels? And then if you grow something larger, does it stop spanning, or is it set to full browser width? Another thing you do want to analyze. I'm going to pull down on File here and select Add or Remove Web Fonts. And I'm going to go ahead and search for Proxima. So Proxima is a typekit typeface that's available. I can see the extended, condensed. I think I just want Proxima Nova plain. So I'm going to check that and go ahead and click OK so that I have those typefaces. Now it only added one font family, and I think we've got a few going on there. We decided semi-bold and regular. Let's take a look at what we did pull in for that typeface. We'll just do a quick type test. And let's see if I've got Proxima here. Okay, so, well, no, here's Proxima Nova. I've got bold and regular. No, I've got more. So notice what my little tiny mind's bumping into. System fonts versus web fonts. Really big difference. Do not grab the system fonts. Anything that I do with bold and regular is going to render as an image or a bitmap. You mostly never want to do that. There's some reasons why I've found that to be a good practice in certain odd scenarios, but in almost all cases, you're going to want to use the typekit font. Okay, I notice I've got a question in the chat. If you are watching on Facebook, go ahead and put your questions in the comments towards the bottom. I'm just a jack of all trades here, so I need to juggle between everything, but I will swing through Facebook and check out questions as they come. So Proxima Nova family is the one that pulled some of its weights. Okay. Yes. So the whole world of typography is an amazing one. And there's lots of nuances there. If you are matching a site exactly, you're going to want to make absolutely sure that you have all of those elements in place. For what we're doing right now, I think ballpark, I'm probably in pretty good shape. I'm going to stop and check Facebook real quick here. And see if we're on track. Yes, we are. It's always frightening to see yourself on your phone. Okay. Just see if we're on track. And to hear yourself. All right. I've got an eye on the comments that are coming there on Facebook as well. So let's keep going. As you work, you can swing back into this what font and just bring it up pretty easily as you go along. Another tool that I tend to really like is a color picker. Let's say that this site has a whole lot of not color. It's got a whole lot of images in the background, and there's not a lot of color going on. But there's a nice tool that allows you to pick colors in a site. So Colorzilla here, I can just come in and pick a color from the page. Now I've got what's pretty much white, but it would tell me that exact value here. I can copy it to the clipboard. So definitely nice feature there. There are other tools that will help you to look at your site across many breakpoints. The other major thing that I do, I'm going to go ahead and minimize these because that's all I really need. Another tool that's pretty terrific is something called built with. So when people submit site of the day to us, one of the not so funny things is we'll get sites built with who knows what. So we do need to determine that it was actually built with Adobe Muse, which is not always that apparent. The built with plugin is great to see what underlying technologies are being used for a site design. So I know that this is being hosted on WordPress. Again, I can't swear that there was a starting template that was very close to this, but I believe it was originally a template in its original design. So I can tell where it's hosted easily here. I can see if it's using Adobe Muse as well as I dig in with that. So I really like the built with tool as well. All right, next thing I want to do is kind of just look at the lay of the land. I feel as though there's kind of two major forms of navigation going on here. I kind of really like, let me move a toolbar out of the way here. It's never a good place to put it. I kind of really like the way this navigation on the page works. So the main landing page, I'm here on that home page, and it is a scrolling page with anchor tags. So as I scroll down, there's kind of a snapping behavior that tends to happen, and this is a pretty sophisticated WordPress site with a whole lot of interactivity going on, to be honest. There's a lot of JavaScript between breakpoints, JavaScript interactions. Muse has not deeply jumped into JavaScript interactions, but third-party widget developers have. We can get into the whole debate of why doesn't Muse have everything built into it. The widget community consists of over 1,200 different widgets that are out there in the market. And to be really honest, I'll just tell you for a second, the Muse team is not incredibly big. I'd say we're safely less than 50 people at Adobe. And people say, but you're Adobe, aren't you immense? Squarespace, which is a web design browser-based tool. Rumor mill has it. I don't know this directly, but a colleague of mine did research on Squarespace. They have 1,200 employees. As much as I love Muse, I don't see Adobe putting 1,200 people on the team. So the extensibility of Muse is heavily reliant on the open web and our widget community. And I'm a big believer in it. I think when you look at the over 1,200 widgets that are there, people in the community are adding content at such a pace that the team, even if we tripled our staff, could not probably keep up with. Our challenge, our goal is to make sure that widgets are compatible with Muse and that we give good APIs, good connections to those widget developers. And it's something I've been emphasizing with the team, especially of late. But there are a number of widgets that are being used that can help you get pretty close to a lot of the animations that you're seeing here. So in that notes field, one of the things I've given you is something called Anchor Plus from cookie.com. It's a rather old widget. It's free, but it allows you to jump between pages, as I'm doing right now with a keyboard, and apply a JavaScript transition. So the fact that this is paging down on the site, you can simulate in Muse using some of the anchor widgets that allow you to animate between those transitions. As I mentioned, I thought this was kind of a really fun layout. I have footer content that's here. Notice if I bring up the bottom of the page, it's remaining pinned to the bottom. So it's always going to be a fixed distance from the bottom of the page. And as I click on any one of these, it has an anchor defined and it's scrolling down on the page. Other things that I'm seeing that are going on, I've got a background video that's happening here. And as I scroll down, that video is moving at a different speed of scroll. So it has probably a parallax effect or a scroll effect that allows you, as you move here, to move that video at a different speed. We can come close to that as well using parallax effects along with a background video player widget. As I come down to the next section, I have text and an image that's here. So in dissecting this, again, our goal is to rebuild this site out again. So one of the things that I did a little bit this morning when I started working with this site, see if I can get these things out of the way and get closer to, there you go, a little folder that I have. In here, I have grabbed some of the elements that I could find easily. So from the landing page, just kind of as a quick little test, I gathered up a few bits. So I have the background video that's here. So that video that plays in the hero area towards the top. And then from there, there were a series of images. So notice I have each of these images. One of the things that does get a little challenging for me as a non-coder type is how you get to images. So if I'm here in Chrome and I right-click, I can kind of go in and inspect. But as I step through the DOM, it's harder for me to see background images that are in the code. So one of the things I've grown to do, just because, remember, I don't have time to read much about anything, I just have to implement as quickly as I can. I find Firefox is a little gentler and easier about this. So I'm going to come on into Firefox, and I'm going to paste that URL. and just show you how I progress through here. Interestingly enough, on this page, depending on where I click, notice that view background image is not available if I click in the middle. I can't tell you why. It probably has to do with the document structure. But if I click off on the side, I can come in and copy the video. So save the video. I went in and did that. As I move down, again, once again, here, if I click right in the middle, view background image is grayed out. But if I come out on the side, I can go in and save that background image or view the background image as a separate bit and just drag it off. So kind of a nice way to find those background fills using Firefox. So let's start to come in now. I've got those basic elements and build out this initial page kind of quickly, if at all possible. So as I mentioned, I see two forms of navigation. On the landing page, there are anchor tags that take you to different locations on that page. And then up towards the top, we've got more complex navigation that takes you to separate pages within the site. Now this, I'll just say, is pretty much a trigger target. I don't know how they built it, but that's what I would do. So notice as I roll over the trigger for about, a target comes up, which has the menu items, who we are, Sundays, leadership, and staff. Let's go back. We'll get out of Firefox and come on back over into Chrome. And we'll hide the code here for a minute. And we'll start to build some of these out. So about, connect, resources, give, and contact. I would say these are all the parent pages. I would put them at the top level of my navigation. So let's go do that a little quickly. I'm going to swing over into Muse. Again, I always have to look at this 16 times. So we're going to come back quickly. I don't think about is the landing page, so we're going to have just a home page here. Welcome, we'll call that. We've got about, what else? Connect resources. There's a nice shortcut there, Shift Command or Shift Control P? No, I do it all the time. Yeah, Shift Command P or Shift Control P adds a page in the site plan. Give and contact. And I can bring down my thumbnails so they fit better on the page, hitting Shift Command or Control minus to zoom out easily. Now from there, there's going to be child pages, as I mentioned. Who we are, Sundays, we'll start a little bit here. So I would put them as child pages here. The advantage of everything up at the top level is that can be included in a parent navigation. I have the ability to have parent and child navigation. I don't recommend using our built-in widgets to do parent-child. It can be a little frustrating. There are manual ways you can build them probably a little bit better, but you're welcome to give it a try. Let's see who we are, and we'll just add Sundays. So starting to build out that site structure. Let's go back into the welcome page. Now, as we look, we did talk about what mobile layouts there are and what navigation. From what I can tell, at least in the landing page, I've got pretty much, I haven't seen anything that contradicts that this is one breakpoint coming down to about that 700 mark, is it? Or 800. So at about 800 pixels, we have that mobile menu. And if I click on the mobile menu, it's an animated menu. Muse does not have something that animates built into Muse in this way with parent and child hierarchy here. It is possible through a little bit of struggling, to be honest. I've spent some time doing this myself, that you can build out a trigger target, basically, so a composition widget that will go full browser width. And inside of that widget, you can have accordions that push down content with child menus. As I mentioned, I've built it out. That rowing site I'm always relying on has something of this sort, but I would argue it's probably worth buying a third-party menu widget. I know that I've given, again, a couple examples here. The multi-level accordion widget from Cookie, for example, will allow you to have this kind of a structure. So you'll come on in and define your parent level child level, you can add some of the similar animations. So if you're in love with this menu, I encourage you to give it a try. If you want to rough it and you don't really want to subscribe to a widget company, there is an example site that I have at muse-menus.businesscatalyst.com. What I did is I took the native widgets within Muse and I built out some of the common mobile examples that I've seen. And if you go there, you can download this source file, but you see different examples of different approaches that are taken here. So kind of giving you good ideas about how you can build out mobile menus in absence of having that functionality built directly within Muse. As I mentioned, these are examples of layout elements as well as the native widgets that are there. So kind of staying on track, we're going to go ahead and set up 2 breakpoints for the site. And I'll do the second one at about, that's interesting, at about 800 is what I would say. So I'll come on in now and go into my master page. And I've got that initial breakpoint of 1400, actually 1200. And I'll come on in and add a second breakpoint at 800. And I would have my mobile menu on this second breakpoint. This will now apply to all of the pages since they're leveraging that master page. I'll have, you'll notice here, we call them fangs on the Muse team, but there's the little triangular indication that lets you know that the master page has 2 breakpoints, and this is where I would change that mobile menu. All right, let's kind of keep going a little bit here. I'm going to step back out. So I've got that accordion, I've got that anchor tag menu that's pinned to the bottom of the page. One thing I'm curious about is when you get to a certain point, it just goes away. It's kind of interesting. As I mentioned, this site has a lot going on, but that navigation is present in the larger breakpoint, and then it kind of just leaves, and you have the ability to, through a series of arrows, kind of jump to the next breakpoint location. So we can experiment with that a little bit, but let's get this main menu set up. So I've got different choices here. Let's see how I do remembering all of this. So basically speaking, I'm not going to, as we mentioned, I'm not going to be literal about too much of this site because I'd rather speak more broadly and cover more how you do that aspects of the site. Really, I swear I could do it. But what I would do for that footer navigation for this approach right here, if you're in love with the way you roll over these elements and they animate, I have given you some links to animation widgets in Adobe Muse. And the other is on load animations for fluid breakpoints. So Muse Themes has, along with probably 5 other widget developers, has pretty much shamed the Muse team and has taken the idea of scroll effects and applying them to fluid breakpoints and allowing you to have just different JavaScript effects that work there. And it's, I think, pretty terrific and pretty elegant and simple to work with. The on-load animation from Muse Themes is pretty terrific, but it would allow you to have some of the rollover effects or some of the on-load effects that you're seeing. Let's go ahead and add these. I'm going to just number them 1, 2, 3, 4. What do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bad time for a phone call here. So what I would do is just come on in. Personally, I would either start with a states button, depending on the complexity. Notice as I roll over here, not only does the background color change, the text changes. You can probably achieve that with a text box, but I can come on in and go ahead and use a states button just for good measure here. So I'm going to go into the buttons directory here. What the states button does is it unifies all of the states for everything within a container. So I'm going to come in, of course, and clear all the widget contents and clear all the default styling, which makes it very difficult to see what I'm doing straight away. So you're going to want to make sure that you have guides visible and edges. I want to be able to see my edges here. I'll come on in and add a text container inside. And we're just going to call this 1. And I will come on in and center it. Let's see if I can attempt to even choose that proxima. Typeface, we'll come on in and just do a quick guess. Probably the wrong weight, but we'll go with medium. And I want to go ahead and set some different states to this object. So if we look at the example, it starts with white on black, and then a rollover is black on white. So pretty simple. We're going to go ahead and start with white text on black. So let's make sure I got my act together here. I'm going to go ahead and give it a fill color of black. And the text is going to be white. Now, Ali Pordelli, and one of the things I complained about is Muse does not, we have the idea of centering things horizontally. We're a little light in our delivery on centering things vertically. So one of the things that always bugs me is when you find buttons do not stay centered. One way to make sure that that stays a little bit more centered is to use the line height to set the height of that object rather than spacing around the object. You'll end up with a better centered instance. Because this is text inside of a states button, it's not as much of an issue. I'm going to come on in and just go to my states panel, and I'll select this guy. I want to make it such that on the rollover, the fill goes to white, and that the text goes to black. Now, if you're building out a button, one really good tip when you're doing that is in order to make sure that button does not jump around an awful lot, be sure that you stroke both states. So if the normal state is black, or let's say the normal state is white in the center with a black stroke, and then the mouse down state is all black, set a stroke for both of those and change the color value of those strokes. Then you won't get buttons that kind of jump back and forth when that stroke is changing. All right, we need a little bit color going on our page here so that we can see what we're doing. Let's try just a browser fill of gray just for the moment. And I've got that first object with my two states. So what I would do at this point is come ahead and I'll show you a really nice trick I like, is I know that I want 5 buttons across the 1200 pixel width size for this object. A really nice way to do that is come on in and grab your button, and using the transform tool, just some simple math. I'm going to set the width to be 1200 divided by 5, and then I know it's going to really precisely work out now as I do this. I can also come to these two objects and using the align panel, center them. So I know that everybody's in pretty good shape. And now I'll just come on in and duplicate these guys. I'm holding the shift key to keep them aligned horizontally. And as I play these out, they'll nicely fit the size. Now I will come on in, now that I've done this, I should have done it first. Let's just see what the default attributes. Notice that I've got the text set to be responsive width, which is great. You're going to want to make sure that you give yourself a little bit of extra room in this text container. Although it may look good on your Muse application and in your browser, typography is very different between browsers. So you always want to make sure you give yourself a little bit of padding to make sure you don't get a break that you may not see on your device, but the viewer of your site would see. So real quick, we'll come on in and change these. Question is, has Muse gotten more complex and websites gotten more complex, or have I just started to talk too much as I'm working? Not really sure, but time's wasting. Oh my God, time's crazy wasting. Okay, we're going to keep going though. Now that I have these elements, what I want to do is go ahead and move them towards the bottom of the page. I can get rid of my footer area if I don't need it in my design. It's on my master. I'm going to try to be quick here. Let's go to the master and make this change very quickly. All right, and we'll go back out to that first welcome page. And I want to move this guy down towards the bottom. Maybe the world is going to argue with me. That's all right. I'm going to leave it for now. Does bug me, but what I want to do for this is kind of two things. Let's go ahead and move this really low on the page because we want to exaggerate a long page. So let's go with it there. Close enough. Let's try there. Next thing I want to do is set some anchor tags, and I want to tie those anchor tags to my navigation. So I'm going to type A on the keyboard or go to the anchor tool here. Typing A, you always in the world of responsive design want to drop your anchors to the left side of the page. It's a safer bet, engineering tells me. So I'm going to go ahead and start at the top, and I'll just call this top. I'll hit it again, and we'll do 1. Hit it again, and we'll do 2. This will kind of prove my point pretty well. Another nice trick I like is go ahead and select one of the anchors, right-click to select same. Make sure you align them all up and then move them where you want them to be off to that side there. But that's a quick way to get to all those anchors and line them up. Next thing I want to do is come on into this footer navigation. And I'm going to select each of my items. Nice thing about a states button is I just select the overall state button. I don't have to select each element within it. And I'm going to go to my hyperlinks dropdown and set 1 here. We'll come on in and select 2. And we'll define that as 2. And we don't have a 3, so you'll get the point. We could have a back to top. Let's make 5 back to top just to be funny. Back to top. The other bit of magic is that you're going to want to come in and select that navigation now that you've done that. And I want to, oddly enough, pin it to the bottom of my browser. Now let's see what the heck I just did there. All right, it made my website really small. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to get my page a little shorter or taller now. And let's just test how well that's gone for us. But let's give ourselves a little something to look at. So I'm going to come on in and I'm going to grab a widget. This is one, if you talk to Ali Pordelli at cookie.com, he delivered it for free to me to bundle with some LinkedIn learning that I did for Muse Essential training. It is a widget that he has for free. It allows you to do background videos. So I'm going to go into the cookie widgets and grab the video background widget. And I'm going to place this on the canvas. And I'm going to go ahead and just link to that video landing that I took from the live site. I'll select it. The nice part about this widget is it allows you to have a background video playing, but just in the top area. You don't have to actually extend it to the entire background. Oh my goodness, this is my page thing I'm doing. Sorry, folks. This is why everything has gone strange. Let's do this. Okay. All right, so roughly speaking, I've got that first anchor and I've got a background video. Let's go ahead and place that second image that we saw. So is this, nope, desktop. Okay. I know somebody's saying, hey, Dani, why don't you call this build one web page in 60 minutes or less? And you'd be right. You'd be right. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and put a second landing here. Now, as I mentioned, you can decide if you want to box it in. If I box it in this way, it's going to stop at 1200. I'm going to set it to be responsive width or full browser width at the moment. Oh my goodness. See, if you try to go faster, you just, quality goes out the window. Because I'm boxed in, full browser width is not going to pop up. But we'll get an image here. Oh my goodness. And let's just go ahead and drop a second one in. Okay. All right, so let's see how our magic trick works. So we've gone in and set this to be pinned to the bottom. We're going to also want to right click and make sure that we set it to the front so that we'll layer on top of everything we've done. And then I'm going to pull that under File to Preview Page in Browser, or hit the magic keyboard command, Shift Command E. And we got a nice little video going on. I set the browser to be gray, so it's behaving in an odd manner. But notice as I move up and down on the page, that navigation is moving with me, and I can click on different parts. Let's go to 2 here, 3. We go 5, which takes us back to the top, which makes tons of sense. So that's that first bit of magic, is actually adding that. If you really like the way anchor tags basically are working on the design, and you'd like to have it so that you can use a keyboard to jump between anchors and have a smooth JavaScript transition, what you want to do is go grab the Anchor Plus widget from cookie.com. It's free, and it will give you some of the easing behavior and some of that first steps. All right, I got to look at talk here a little bit. I'm sorry, we call it talk. Questions in chat. All right, we're looking pretty good. And questions in, all right, I've got a pretty attentive audience here. Next thing I would do if it were me is go on into the site and start grabbing bits. I hate to type anything that I don't have to, so I'm a big fan of copy paste. And this site behaves kind of in a funny, interesting way. I can come on in and grab a whole lot. You'll notice here, if you get right on it, you can grab some text. So next thing I would do is grab, see, it's pretty odd. You got to get right on the right pieces. Good enough. Copy that. Swing it on into Muse. We're going to come in and paste it. I believe that is on the video area. Show you a couple nice features. I've been building a lot of responsive websites lately. With this video widget, you also can set the background image if it pleases you, so that when the video is not playing, you get a background image. You do that by clicking on the widget and basically click on the widget and then go under the fill and set a background image there. I'm not going to do it at the moment, but let's try to do this kind of quickly. I'll come on in and grab that Proxima Nova medium. Sounds good. Make it incredibly large. And I'm going to type T on the keyboard and center it. Maybe. Got some stuff in my way here. Too many pop-ups. Let's do it here. Here's one of my favorites as you're building out web pages. If you hold down Option and Command, or Option and Control if you're on a PC, when you press and drag, it's going to grow the text container in both directions so that I'm still surprised I'm doing a religious website. This is unusual for me. But I'm going to come on in now and change that to be white. And chances are I can copy and paste this down and start to build out the rest of my content. So the next thing that happens is there's some nice links here that are linking to different places on the site. So these are, again, there's an animation effect that's here that takes you to those pages that are more deeply nested inside the site here. Let's go ahead and talk about just the one more approach here, and we probably have to call it, which is how you can do a menu like this. I mentioned that it's a trigger target menu, but let's do a quick example of that. I'm going to come on over and think for a minute. The way I would do it, because we have all of the pages set up, here, let me give myself a background fill image of some sort so I can see what I'm doing. This probably will not match the video, but it makes me happy. So I got a little something to focus on. Okay, so I got my text that's here. I'm going to add my navigation. So we're going to go on into the widget library. It's awfully nice that the menu widget keeps track of all your pages for you. So I kind of like that. I'm going to drag it onto the canvas. I'm going to quickly remove all of the default formatting because it's the right thing to do. I'm going to apply a typeface. So we'll go back to the Proxima family. Proxima medium sounds really great to me. We'll go ahead and center these guys. You can set fluid width or fluid, what they call uniform size or uniform spacing. It always confuses me. Uniform size mean they're going to be button-like and have the same size with one another. We're going to go with uniform spacing, which means that the longer bits will take more space. It gives you equal space around the words, less button-like. But with that done, let's go on in and make it white. The next thing I honestly would do, and you'd have to play with the responsive behavior and make sure that it behaves for you in this approach. But I would go into the widget library. I would select the composition widget. This is the most magical, powerful widget ever in the world of Muse. It has what's known as a trigger and a target. I'm going to come in and go to the default state. So clear all styling, clear all widget content so that nobody can tell what the heck's going on here. I'm going to have basically a trigger. Sorry, I don't know how to make this more visible really quickly here. Let's move this off on the side. It may not help, but select this guy. Doesn't help immensely. But I've got a trigger up here that I want to move up to the top, and then I've got a target. And inside the target, I can be lazy again. I'm going to select this menu, and I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it. And I'm going to come to this menu, and I'm going to change it to be vertical, so it's stacked. And I'll probably align it to the left using a keyboard command, Shift Command or Control L. Next thing I want to do is go in and, since I kind of like the look of it, instead of it being top level pages, I'm going to set it to manual. Because if you remember, we've got this site plan, and we're going to have all these pages that are here. Who we are and Sundays, for example. So I'm going to come back here and go back to my page and just manually enter this. So I like the dynamic, I like the menu feature, but I don't want it to pull the names from the site plan. It's not worth it really. So who we are, goodness knows I can't remember these pages for more than 10 seconds, and Sundays. I'll come in and add a second one. If I hit escape, I get those little plus signs. Set this to Sundays. Hit escape. And I'm going to put that in my target. It's not going to be perfect yet. I would need a little bit of fiddling for sure. I can set a fill to the text or just a fill to the container. Let's go ahead and have that be a white fill. Feels like they got some fun stuff going on this as well. Notice the rounded corners. It's kind of a little odd. It's round, I can't even show you. It's rounded on the right, it's kind of rounded on the bottom, and square at the top, and square here. So, and notice the rollover states. We can do all of this pretty easily. So interestingly enough, I'm going to take this container, and I'm going to round out everything but that far corner. And this is going to be my little about section. And I'll move that down a little bit here. And let's actually get some text that we can see. So text container here, with it selected, type T on the keyboard and pick a lovely shade of gray. I could use that little styler picker to get my colors right. If I wanted to match the existing site, go ahead and inset it just a little bit. We'll move it on up here. Now comes some of the magic. We want to basically select that it be, and I never remember, I think you have to set it to be scattered, which allows you to decide to show the target on either click or rollover. Rollover is pretty sexy these days. Hide target on rollout of trigger and target. Last thing I would do is come on in and make sure each of these link out to those pages, because I'm doing that manually. So who we are goes to, notice the hierarchy here, who we are. It's just reflecting that site plan. Sundays, hit escape to get to the right level and go to about who we are Sundays. Last thing I want to do once I have it all assembled is go ahead and have it not show the light box parts because I'm no longer editing. And let's move it over into our welcome area. You're going to want to pay attention to how things are pinned because you're building out a responsive page here. We're going to have a video going on here too. Instinctively, I want these all to be pinned. We're going to just make a guess at this. Pinning is always a little bit of experimentation. Let's go ahead and align it to the right side of the page. I'm not going to pin it to the top. Let's go check and see here real quick. This is actually, it is pinned to navigation. So notice that about stays as I scroll down, and so does my submenus. So it is pinned. Kind of makes life a little simpler. We'll come in and select our navigation, and we're going to use the pinning metaphor, or the pinning interface, and pin it to the upper right-hand corner. And we're going to also take that trigger and target and pin it to the same upper right-hand corner. We're going to cross our toes and our fingers and preview the page in browser. Well, we itch our itchy eye here. Pretty good, not perfect, but let's see. Reasonable start. So that is the live site. Let's go back to my site. I want to check that again. Let's see. We got this guy's here, and it is pinned. Might need to do a little bit of fiddling. Let's go ahead and stretch it out so it's larger. All right, I know things are looking a little fragile. I need to do a little bit of refining. For example, my trigger is not where it needs to be. But roughly speaking, I could change the rollover state to the word welcome here so that it matches what I got here, which is, notice that as I roll over to about, got two things going on, and you have to play with this a little bit. You may want to go ahead and put the navigation inside the trigger, because notice that it not only is there, but it's changing colors. So I can put a trigger over the word about that's really underneath it, but I'm not going to be able to change the state. So what I would do is probably not use the automatic menu here. I would, for each trigger, set the word about. It also makes my life easier with the trouble that you see I'm having, which is trying to align my triggers to the proper area here. If welcome, for example, was already in the header area there, I would have an easier time. All right, people, we have blown through exactly an hour. And I think we got pretty far building a web page in 60 minutes or less. How to remove welcome from the menu. Sure, there's a question saying, please show how to get welcome out of the menu. And that's a really great point. So it says welcome here because, as we know in our site plan, I added a welcome page. It's part of the important part of life. What I want to do is make sure that's not included in the navigation, though. So if I right-click on this page, I have some menu options. I can come in and say exclude the page from the menus. And that effectively, when I come back now, wow, I blew through a lot of battery in an hour. I no longer have the welcome, I just have the word about, and can progress that way. It's definitely worth experimenting a little bit to see what these options are. They're pretty robust. For example, I can have a category like about that never shows up anywhere. I can exclude it from my navigation and use it more of a way to organize child pages. I can also exclude it from the menus, and notice I can include it without a hyperlink. That allows me to link to anything I'd like to. I can link to anywhere different rather than the dynamic menus that are here. If you are working on a page, let's say you have a site with a client, the client says they want to add a new page. You're in the middle of working on that page, but you're not ready to take it live. Uncheck the export page little checkbox here. We delivered this feature and then people forgot that they had checked that and couldn't figure out where their page went. So we at least grayed out the thumbnail so you understand that that will be in your local design. It will not upload to a hosting platform. It will not be exported. So again, just kind of touching on all of this. In summary, come next week if you want to learn what's new about Muse or catch the recording. It's pretty exciting. We've been working for a long time on some of the enhancements that we're cooking up, and we're ready to start talking about it. I hope I see you here in a week. It kind of opens the door to a whole new area of Muse enhancements. If you can't wait that long, jump into the private beta at museprerelease.com and log in with your Adobe ID. You can take a sneak at what's coming or just join us, for at least the unveiling next Wednesday. Thank you, everyone, for your time, and Thanks for everything you do for the Muse team. We're really excited to be making these enhancements that we got coming. So we'll see you again soon.